think that's true for the Christian just as much as it's true for the atheist. So insofar as there's meaning in life, I suspect that if we ask Jordan and we ask Shandon what really is important to them, what's significant to them, they're going to say things like family, career, projects, and they'll also say some degree of spirituality, I'm sure of that as well. But many of those things that they find meaningful and make their life worthwhile are things that I find meaningful and that Michael finds meaningful and makes life worthwhile as well. So this idea that if you don't believe in God, all meaning disappears in life, all things that make life worth living suddenly vanish, I just don't buy that. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, actually, we completely agree with everything that they're saying about that. This is not supposed to be an argument for God's existence. It's more or less an argument to have you have an interest in debates like these, and perhaps be a philosophy major and pursue the questions further. But let me just say something about with respect to meaning of life. Yes, it's true. You can live happy lives. You can go about your way. But listen to what, as some atheists have wrestled with this question. Just listen to the responses here. Like the Canadian philosopher atheist Kai Nielsen writes, "Without God, there can be no overarching purpose, no one basic scheme of human existence, in virtue of which we could find a meaning for our grubby lives. It is this overall sense of meaning that man so ardently strives for, but it is not to be found in a purely secular worldview." Why? Because life ends at the grave, and that's it. Now, I don't want to establish wishful thinking, because we don't advocate that at all. We don't think that because we would like God to exist, it's a nice idea, that therefore he does. That's fallacious. But I think that this is something that we need to seriously ponder as we listen to the discussions here tonight. I want you to weigh out, does God exist? Listen to reasons on both sides, and on balance, which way does the evidence seem to be pointing? Because it's significant how we answer that question. Might we be in a Nielsen's world where there is no overarching purpose, everything will ultimately die, the universe itself will become a corpse in the dark era? I mean, that doesn't sound very good, but it could be true. The question is, we should have an aversion to that and want to see with every fiber of our being whether or not God in fact exists. And Michael had mentioned, he'd said something about, and as Bill as well, he said, we can find meaning in life. Listen to what Julian Baggini says, atheist philosopher, in his book, What's It All About? We may be mistaken or ignorant about the value and meaning of our own lives. So it does not simply follow from the fact that a person thinks they have a meaningful life, that they actually do. Right. It's sort of a game of self-delusion. We make ourselves happy, we bide our time, we live off the life of Novocaine and happiness until the great. That's it. Is that really what life is all about?
Yes, I do. I'm just checking my quotations here. Yes, this is dealing specifically with the value, the worth, the dignity of humankind, human life. What is it about? What is the meaning of life? Why are we even obsessed with the question at all? Does the question even have any meaning? Here is a quotation from a gentleman, Dr. Ramachandran. If you're into neurosciences, I'm sure he's well known. I'm not familiar with him. But director of the Center for Brain and Cognition and professor of the Psychology Department of Neurosciences and program at the University of California, San Diego, etc. And he says it like this, dealing with human consciousness. Even though it is common knowledge, it never ceases to amaze me that all the richness of our mental life, all our feelings, our emotions, our thoughts, our ambitions, our love lives, our religious sentiments, and even what each of us regards as his or own intimate, private self, the I, the ego, the me. This is all simply the activities of these little specks of jelly in our heads, in our brains. There is nothing more. And this is from a gentleman who Richard Dawkins in particular says is the Marco Polo of neurosciences. Or to go back to one gentleman, Pierre Cannabis, who is recognized a materialist French philosopher. Oh, I'm sorry. This physician, Pierre Cabanis, was summed up by the materialist French philosopher Julian Metry by the quotation, "The brain secretes thought the way that the liver secretes bile." It's very meaningful. the very question, the meaning of life, is itself a meaningless question because it arises from the constituent parts of a mechanized, deterministic, non-rational origin. So where do we even get the very idea that we should be obsessed or should be thinking of these very things? Where do we even get the idea that myself is actually a thing? These are questions which we're dealing with specifically, not the wishful thinking, not any of this, but is our own personal, intimate experience of our own self more reasonably explained by a non-rational origin or by a rational origin? If the universe is rational, if my mind is rational, then it should be a rational origin. It seems most likely.
Let me just say something about that last point. I mean, look, throughout human history, there's been the suggestion that the better we understand something, or the more we understand it from a scientific perspective, the more terrible that will be. The less we'll wind up appreciating it. And I actually think that's just completely false. I mean, the analogy with consciousness, people said the exact same thing about life, right? You could never try to explain life as purely biological, organic, mechanistic, cellular processes. There's got to be a vital spirit to it. There's the elan vital. It's got to be mysterious. But the truth of the matter is we now understand life to be exactly what the materialist said it is. It's a biological processes, it's organic processes. And far from removing the mystery and our wonder about it, if anything, it's made us appreciate it a great deal more. We really do. The scientific understanding of everything seems to actually deepen our appreciation, deepen our wonder. And I think the exact same thing can be said about consciousness and thought and how the brain works as well, which is why one of the reasons why, in fact, I chose to work in that field. Just one little point here, and I think this might be able to wrap it up. I mean, I think that really what we're disagreeing about isn't much here. Here's one way to kind of sum up the disagreement. When Shannon and Jordan go and work in a soup kitchen or work for a youth club or something like that, they come out of it and they say, man, that was really good. That was really rewarding. It's great to serve God in that way. And I think when Mike and I go and work in a soup kitchen or we work for a youth club and come out of it, we say, man, that was really rewarding. That was really great. It's really great to serve our fellow humans that way. And that's really the only difference.
Of course, that's a false dilemma. Of course, we see that service to our fellow humanity is, of course, also in service of God. And I'm not sure if we had a question on the table tonight about moral values, but sometimes there certainly is a link, so we'll defer that to him.
Okay, I think we can move on to the next question then. I think we're over here for the question.
Okay. You brought up, the problem, David Lewis's problem of what he calls divine evil and this immense suffering inflicted upon non-believers or just believers of the wrong God. So, leaving out of that, once we realize, your God punishes the people who believe in or worship the wrong way, are punished immensely. So then, why doesn't God make it more reasonable to believe in Him? Why does He seem to try to stay hidden? If our worship of Him is so important, the most important thing a person can do in life is to find God. And why is the evidence for God so scant?